Thanks for being here. Welcome. We are really excited to listen to our panel today, and Ruhl Heyman will welcome and have them introduce themselves.
Thank you. Welcome, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here at American Heritage School. My name is Ruhl Heyman, and I will be the facilitator for this panel discussion. And we'll introduce ourselves briefly. We'll start with Don Powell, and then Jeremy Randall, and then I'll introduce myself.
Make sure I have the right name tag. Don Powell from Mapleton, Utah. We have been homeschooling in family school since its origin, and probably maybe even a little bit before that. We have 9 children, ranging from a 23-year-old, or soon to be 23 in New York, to our 3-year-old here at home. And so we still have 7 still at home. We've homeschooled them all the way from preschool through high school. One's graduated from BYU already, and that's our family.
Okay, great. Jeremy Randall. We love education. Glad that you're here with us. My wife is here in the audience to support me, so I'm glad she's here. We are educators together. We both graduated from BYU, Idaho, about, what has it been, 13 years now. That's where we met and married. She was actually my math tutor for elementary education math. That was a fun story. I've never used that math since then, but glad that I got some benefit from that, a lot of benefit. We've been educating. We found out we were both going to be, obviously we're in the elementary education field. So I actually teach here at American Heritage School. I teach 11 and 12-year-old youth, so that would be 6th grade. This is my 7th year here and 12th year teaching. Anyway, we've been homeschooling ever since we were married. We thought that we would just put our kids in public school, and then we were open to the new ideas of homeschooling and paradigm shift there. And so we've been homeschooling ever since. We've got 5 children. Our oldest is 11, our youngest is 3, and we're expecting one in August. A great surprise to us a few months ago. So the Lord doesn't feel that we're done yet. So great sense of humor there. We love what we do. It is a challenge, but we're obviously very involved with it, and just enjoy the seeing our kids become who God intends them to become. So, thank you.
My name is Ruhl Heyman. You turn yours off.
There we go.
And I live in Santaquin, Utah. My wife and I have 7 children. My oldest is 24, and I have a grandson. I have a young son that's on a mission right now, and that's in college right now, and then 4 here at American Heritage School. I do teach here at American Heritage School. I teach my students all the time that everything I teach them I've never been tested on. Everything I teach them I've never taken a class for in a university setting. Isn't that interesting? We've been homeschooling since my children were very small. My daughter probably around 5, 6 years old. My oldest, and we've been involved. I consider I have a kind of maybe more liberal definition of homeschooling, because we've done private school, public school, Commonwealth, Vanguard, you name the homeschool association opportunity, and we've taken advantage of it. Homeschooling to me is when mothers and fathers get on their knees and plead with the heavens to know what to do with each individual child. And we've seen very individual education experiences for our children. My daughter, for example, who's a 9th grader here at American Heritage, has never been to a school before. She's been in Commonwealths, she's been in Vanguard, she's been just at home. And so this is her first experience having to sit in a classroom with structure and math. And we had math, but it was never this structured. And so it's been fun to watch her grow and progress. Anyway, very excited to be here. We live at a critical time in history, and we need moms and dads and children to be on the same page as much as possible with what the heavens would have us do. So with that, we're going to keep this as informal as we can, as interesting as we can, and as engaging as we can. And I will be the facilitator, so basically we'd like you to ask questions. And we'll do our best to answer them in a brief, concise manner and distribute the answering amongst ourselves. If you have a specific question for one of us, just address us. Again, Mr. Powell, Mr. Randall, Mr. Heyman. And so we'll open the floor up to you. Yes, in the back right there.
So I don't have young children.
Wonderful.
And I have an interest in homeschooling. I guess my question for you is, for any of you, how did you arrive at deciding to homeschool? Was it a mutual agreement between you and your wife? Did it take some persuasion, or what pushed you over the edge? Basically, it's kind of this thing that we're starting to talk about as we now are approaching that age of having young kids in elementary school. We're not sure where we are. We're just exploring. But I guess I think I'm more on board than my wife, that she has to do more of the work. So you know what I mean? So
Sure.
it's easy anyway.
Okay, Mr. Powell, why don't you tackle that?
So I turn mine on?
Yeah, I'll turn mine on.
You know, if you just push the little button, it'll come on. We don't have to keep doing that.
First thing, commenting on what you said is, was it a mutual agreement? If it's not a mutual agreement, don't do it, because it will never work out unless you're both in full agreement on it. My wife was the initiator, but it took very little persuasion for me to do it. Now, I'm having to go back almost 20 years to try and remember, so I might forget a few of the pieces. But we knew that we wanted to have a Christ-centered education for our children. And we felt the only way that we could do it was to do it in our home. And so that was the genesis of our deciding to homeschool. We've chosen many different paths along the way, and now we've gotten to the family school, which is, in my mind, the best for the core subjects. And your comment about your wife will be doing the majority of the work, that's true, but you'll be doing a lot of the work behind the scenes and doing a lot of research and a lot of help. And comment similar to what Rule said earlier on, homeschooling is not just the core subjects. Homeschooling is 24 hours a day. And so don't ever forget that piece of it also.
Do you want to share your thoughts?
Sure. You know, I'm kind of in the same boat that you were in about 12 years ago. You know, my wife did very well in the public school setting, and I was more of a, had to struggle through, you know, the public schools. And so we were introduced to the concepts of leadership education, you know, a little concerned about the way that the public school was headed with more government intervention. Obviously, going through college, that was becoming very apparent with a lot of assessment-driven curriculum and testing. And so the philosophies of being more leadership style, Christ-centered, American heritage founding principles were very close to our hearts. And so I had to kind of spearhead that and convincing her maybe that we should look at other options. And I would certainly say, obviously make it a prayerful matter. If you're the one that's spearheading that, you know, gentleness, loving ways. And as you know, Mr. Powell said here, obviously you're going to need to be on board together. But I guess the principle that I'm trying to say is that the Lord is in the details of our lives, and He knows those spirits that are coming to your home, and He knows the potential that they have and what they're supposed to be. And so at every step of the way, you know, as Rules mentioned, you know, maybe homeschooling for one and maybe a charter school for another. So I think you always have to stay open to the options, is what I'm saying.
Testing. Back in 1992, my wife, we were living back, I grew up in the DC area in Virginia, and my mother was an expert at getting summer hires jobs for the government. So we went back, and she worked at the Pentagon, and I worked for the Department of Medicine and Surgery with the Navy, and I was microfishing all summer long. It was miserable. Microfishing, medical records, 8 hours a day, 40 hours a week. And so I remember I bought the latest and greatest technology, which was a Walkman. Went down to my local library and checked out about 20 to 30 classics, from I, Claudius to Treasure Island to Les Mis. And I listened to these books, and I'd grown up in a home where my father advocated the hard sciences and the classics. That's a very liberal arts education, and I knew that it was something that just wasn't easy to find. And I remember coming back from that, just hungering and thirsting for a change. And in '96, I had a homeschooling family, a home teaching family that I was visiting, and the fellow's father was a doctor there in Logan. We were going to school at Utah State, and he was talking about how they were having this homeschooling convention, and they were reciting Plato and studying the Constitution, and then his parents were taking his siblings down to South America for a month for school, and I just thought, wow, that's just amazing. And so I went to my first homeschooling convention at UVU, UCSC, USC, UCSC, whatever it used before UVU, when it was before it was UVU, and started that process, and went to my wife and said, again, she was raised by a public school teacher. Many public school teachers in her family, I think apostasy was their greatest fear for us when we started to homeschool. But ultimately, it's one of the focus of good education, particularly from a father's perspective. It's got to be faith driven. Much of our educational world is fear driven. In almost every single classroom in this world, and I'd say at the university level all the way down, there's so much fear that we can't learn what we need to learn, we can't pay for what we need to pay for, we can't get into the right college, to the right this, to the right that. We have to have faith that there's a God in heaven, and that He will direct us, and we'll know exactly what to do for each child. And that's what we've struggled with that. But learn that He's very much aware of you and your wife, and go to Him. He'll drive you. He'll direct you. He'll know when it's time to give your wife a break. You'll know when it's time to give your wife a break. But don't be afraid. So much fear in this world, and so little faith, particularly in the world of education. Does that help? Okay. Next question, Mr. Swim.
He was first.
You go ahead. What is your name?
Adam?
Adam. Welcome, Adam.
Stop there. My question is, as we've homeschooled for 2 years now, and I've noticed testimonies growing, families becoming tighter, so many great things. But I've also noticed a lack of opportunities to fail. Yes. I don't know how to word that. And so I'm trying to figure out, as a father, how do you help your children have those experiences of failure? Because I personally think they're important in your development. And help them to learn how to deal with that. I don't think it's exclusive to homeschool. Please don't. I think there's a tendency for all of us as parents to want to kind of lubricate those hard times, right? But how do we help them get more of those experiences? What have you found that works?
Why don't we go, Jeremy? Why don't you start with that one? That's your baby.
That's my baby. My oldest is 11. So Saturdays are, I don't think that one's working. Can you hear me?
Trying
Okay. So Saturdays are always a constant chore with chores, and but I think the principle here that we're talking about and helping them understand that it's okay to fail is just giving them constant opportunities where they're in the situations that might make them uncomfortable, and always being that cheerleader, support parent. You have the vision. You have the vision of what you want them to be, and so of course they're going to fight you sometimes, and they're going to maybe pit you against each other. But I'm just trying to understand the question. So you want to make sure that they're in a position that being at home, they're having the opportunities to learn, maybe
To struggle.
to struggle. Is that what you're saying? Okay. And how to help them appreciate that?
Or just experience it. Who cares if they appreciate it?
Like when you completely fall short,
Right.
how you bounce back from that. How you
Okay.
can't let that stop you. You know what I mean? The Thomas Edison, the Michael Jordan experience, not making the team, all those types of things. Because there seems to be, and maybe it's just personality, there seems to be a tendency of just let's keep, just keep going. But I want them to have that.
How old are they?
I have 11 to 2 and 1 on the way.
So-
We're going into when I would say we'll hit those crucial experiences. We're not quite there yet.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, and that's about where I'm at as well. So that's a good question. I'd like that answered as well, you know. But my first impression, though, when you were speaking was, you know, we're in a society where there's a certain standard, right, that we have to maybe fall in line with what the Joneses are doing. Public education seems to present a certain standard that you have to be at a certain reading level. You have to be at a certain math level, right? And so there's this built-in failure system where if you're not there, then you're not up to par with where you should be, along with the rest of society, which certainly weighs on a child's self-esteem, you know, over the long run. And so our children have never been in a public school type setting, but as a father that's my world, not a public school, but the mainstream, where we still have classrooms, we still have brick and mortar buildings where there are still standards that that we're required to meet. There's still scope and sequence lesson plans. And so, you know, I'm constantly fluctuating between that world and the homeschool world, where we don't have those kind of standards. It's more open inquiry. It's more mission-driven. What are you doing here? What's your purpose? And trying to help them understand that your self-esteem, your value does not come from test scores. It doesn't come from where maybe your peers are at, you know, in a church setting or other, you know, when they're interacting with scout groups or whatever it may be. And so helping them understand that, you know, look at Dad doing, you know, going to work and look at Dad helping you with the chores and, you know, following along with, you know, supporting Mom at home and doing the work there. So I don't think that answered the question, but anyway.
Don, you want to tackle
Go
that?
ahead.
Give your thoughts.
Sure, I have a couple. First of all, we live in a day and age where it's politically incorrect for somebody to fail, and that's absolutely incorrect. Short-term failure has the opportunity to build us to be greater than what we are. Long-term failure, if you look at the eternal plan of salvation, that's not an option. But if we're not giving our children the chance to fail, we're not making our home curriculum hard enough. Now, I'm not saying that they should fail at everything by any means, but each one of our children, as you get to know them better through homeschooling and through the, you know, father interviews and everything else that we do on a daily basis, we're going to know what they're good at. We're going to know what they're not good at. And we need to push them in a loving, kind, and an uplifting way and try and give them hard tasks and hard things to do. One quick example, my daughter, who now lives in New York, and she's struggling to work on Broadway. She started out at BYU thinking the only thing that she could do in theater was acting. And so she took the first few acting classes, and she was doing really good. And at BYU, you have proficiencies you have to take before you move on to the next level of acting. And she got a senior mentor, and she went into the proficiencies really well prepared. She comes out, and I remember picking her up and taking her home. How'd you do? And she goes, I think I did really good, Dad. And she was so excited. This was over Christmas break. A few days later, she gets an email saying that basically she couldn't have done much worse. And she was devastated. But the old saying, and it's quite often overused, one door shuts, another one opens. So within a matter of days, she had to figure out what she was going to do. And so she decided to try out this thing that she had never heard of before, stage management. She goes, Dad, I'm going to give that a try. Well, after she had signed up for the class and everything, she gets another email about a week later saying, oops, we sent you the wrong test score. You actually did really well. And she was permitted to move on. But now all the classes were filled. So she got stuck in this stage management class. So because of her supposed failure, what happened? She became one of the top stage management students at BYU, took a number of groups on tour, and given many other responsibilities, including one of the largest productions I ever did there, because of her supposed failure. We need to give our children the chance to fail short term and give them the opportunity to turn that around to become a success. I hope that helps some.
Just one last. There we go. you know, your oldest is 11. One of the challenges, again, is coddling your children at home. And it's a safe, happy, fun, loving environment, and everyone gets along for the most part. I think, you know, what I've tried to do, even in my classroom here at the school, is students perform for the teacher. And sometimes they really don't care. So we've created, and Rebecca was one of my students right here, we've created game time recitals, an opportunity for them to have to stand up in front of the classroom, stand up in front of the peers, debate, argue, give speeches, and it forces them to either really succeed or to fail. So giving them authentic auditional, you know, when we take our children for piano recitals, there's an opportunity to fail. For a violin recital, opportunity to fail. Getting them involved in, you know, some of these commonwealths that are common along here, that what Wasatch Front, they do a Shakespeare class. Getting them involved, and they didn't memorize their lines. There's failure there, there's struggle there. I can't do it, this is hard, everyone else is smarter than me. As they get a little older like that, giving them opportunities to have authentic audiences where they have to step up and produce something or make themselves look really foolish. Those are great opportunities to struggle, to cry, to you know, reset goals. I'm going to do better next time, because there will be a next time. But you need to create those kinds of opportunities in your home, whether it be with your neighbors, with grandma and grandpa, but whether maybe they're memorizing something, maybe they're doing a mathematic competition, maybe they're doing a spelling competition, and you want somebody, and you put them in their best church clothes, you stand them up and you take them out of the house, take them to the church if you have to, put them out in a pavilion, and you're going to find them struggling a lot and also learning a lot too. Does that help a little bit?
Yeah, it does.
Okay. Mr. Swim, you had a question?
Yeah, so my question probably goes just for, well, any of you can answer if you choose to, but I guess I'm struggling right now as we're starting into this, and I'm trying to figure out what kinds of routines I need to be doing as a dad to support my wife in this, because the tough reality is that most of the time is going to be her with the kids.
Yes.
But
Right.
that doesn't mean that she should be stuck with the burden for planning and some other things. So I'm curious what each of you have done, how that relationship has worked with your wife, and what routines you've adopted to be part of that process.
Don, I think you'd be a good one for that.
First thing is, you're absolutely correct, it's support. But it's not just a pat on the back, you did a great job today, honey. We have to do a whole lot more. Most of my day is spent researching things for her to help on that. And then also, in talking about the routine, she has a tendency to do the core subjects of family school as an entire group. And then she takes individual time for the other subjects, such as the language arts and the math, and she works with the younger ones. Then I take over and I do the older ones for the older subjects when I get home from work quite often. A lot of times they're doing independent study, and then I'm reviewing and I'm helping with the problem solving for the areas that they do fail on earlier on, and helping them succeed there. Then for me, one of the key elements in the routine is the wives who are generally doing the lion's share of the load throughout the day. Who are they working with all day long? Little children. You need to make sure that you take time later on in the day for her to speak and work with an adult, because that's a big piece that they're missing. Now, I'm at work all day long and I'm working with adults, you know, university professors, faculty, administration, everything. And so I get home and I just want a break. I get home and she wants to converse and talk with an adult. And so there's that, you have to have a balancing act there. And it took me a while to learn that I had to give her that time. And it helps her so that she's rejuvenated so that she can do stuff again the next day.
My wife knows she's married to somebody who doesn't like to talk at all.
That part I can't help with.
One other suggestion, knowing kind of a little bit of the world that you live in, Stan, and how busy you are, and sometimes fathers don't have the luxury to come home and kind of take over the reins. But I think ultimately listening carefully when she says, Sam needs this, I'm seeing this, and you build in a regular daddy time, a daddy date, where Michelle writes down some of her thoughts or feelings, or Mr., isn't he in your class, Mr. Randall? Mr. Randall give you some feedback, and you take that on, and you have Saturday mornings, you go out for breakfast. You have a regular time for daddy, son, daddy, daughter, those types of things to strengthen what mom's doing, the concern moms has, some of the deficits that maybe the child's struggling with, and then, of course, work with her in time to fix those things. But I think just that, knowing that you are backing her up, particularly on some of the more difficult, maybe behavior issues or academic issues and stuff like that, I think that makes wives very, very, very happy if she's not alone in the battle. So.
Let me just, if I could, just add something there to your question about how do I help support my wife, right? It's kind of the question. Is that right? So we found, and we're not perfect at this, but we found that weekly FEC council, we call it a family executive council, where Shelley and I are able to sit down and go over the plan for the week, maybe monthly planning, and also talk about each individual child. What are their needs? What were the successes that they had this week? What was a challenge that they had? And how can we help them fulfill the goals that they're interested in, right? Maybe it's pottery. Maybe it's merit badges. Maybe it's drama. Whatever it is, what do you want my role to be as dad in helping to facilitate that this week, right? And then you plan that time. I think the date idea is a great thing. When I sit in council with my children on Sundays, that's one of the highlights that they talk about is, one of the few things that they love about dad is going on father dates, right? Playing with dad. It's been mentioned already in our other conferences, children learn by the example, not by the precept. And the longer that I go in as a parent, the more I'm waking up to that reality is it's about the time that I'm investing with them and not so much what I'm preaching to them that's really sinking in. And I think the same thing with my wife. The more that I am listening to her rather than giving my ideas about how I think they should be doing this, because she is the boots on the ground at home, the smoother that things run. Right?
Any ladies out here? What suggestions do you have for Stand Swim and the other fathers in here that are wondering how do they support their wives? Yes, Lisa.
We've talked a lot about doing PPIs regularly, but we had to set up a schedule because it just wasn't happening. And so we assigned, our oldest child gets the first Sunday of the week, or second like that. So we assigned weeks, and then the next Monday, the following Monday, they also do our home evening. And so Dad also helps them, reminds them of their family night the next night that they're in charge of, and supports them with that. But he counsels with me before the PPI every Sunday to see, are there some issues or things that we should make goals regarding, and we just have a little chat, and then they go and have their PPI, and followed by a treat, of course.
Any other thoughts, mothers, fathers? Yes.
This was actually the exact same question I had my wife and I were just chatting about it, because we came up here and discussing the kind of the experience. Now, I'm saying this so that I can put it into practice and give myself accountable. But she's been doing it for a couple of years, and she struggles sometimes with being able to do the lesson plans. There's a lot of them, and to keep the interest in the kids, now that there's more than one, two, now there's 3 kids that she's trying to teach. And I've just been so busy with work, I feel horrible. And I've been supportive in, hey, let's do this, but I have not been supportive in being there. And so we talked about scheduling time in the morning where she's going to get up and to prepare the kids, get ready, and then in the evening to go over the lesson together so that she knows what she's teaching. We can discuss it. I can know what the kids are learning because I've listened to a few of them, and I'm like, this is phenomenal, this is amazing. But I have not even touched 2, 3, 5, 10 lessons out of all of these lessons, just because I get so busy with Monday through Thursday work. So it's something that we just said, you know what, I need to schedule this time in the evening, in the morning, to be with you, to be with the family, to do some of those things. And now I've just got to go home and put it into practice, which is sometimes easier said than done.
Sure.
Let me have one comment on that.
Oh, yeah, late ma'am, right there.
Well, I was just gonna say, we talked a couple weeks ago about, like, during his father interviews, that I would like it if you would talk to the kids about and set educational goals with them, see what they want to achieve, and then if you can come to me and say, she wants to learn more about this, like,
Hmm.
and then he can follow up with her
That's
on
great.
that. The other thing that only would take you like 5-10 minutes when you get home from work is saying, what did you learn at school today? And letting them talk about it, because when they're home, it's just them. They don't have anyone to show their work to. You don't get a big bulletin board on the school wall to hang up their art. And so, like, if you come home and you notice there's something on the fridge that's new that day that they drew, or, Stacking just started his journal and he wrote a sentence today for the first time. That's a big deal. They're big deals to me, and it's just nice to come home and say, hey, what can you show me from school today? And let them have someone to show their work to and to express your pride.
No one's more important than dad, for the most part.
Yeah, they really receive that approval and that praise, and it's nice to get it from someone other than mom. And it takes 5 minutes.
Yeah.
Don, and then right here.
Yeah. I want to make 2 comments on things that were said. One, as far as the lesson goes, consider that a guide and a plan. There's nothing that says that you have to do every single piece from every single lesson. Some of the lessons are short, you can run through the whole thing really quickly. Some of them, if you did the whole thing, it's going to take 3, 4, 5, 6 hours. Make sure that you realize that you don't have to do every aspect. Another thing that we try to do in our home is we talk about the school in the day at the dinner table. And then I take the key items that I've heard from the children and talk to them individually, have them show it to me. And then the following Monday, the next Monday of the week, each one of the children is assigned to teach me and teach the rest of the family one of the gospel principles that they learned from the home family school the week before. And it's worked really well because it gives them an opportunity to stand up in front, potentially fail, but we guide them along and teach something they learned. And they love doing that.
Right here, ma'am.
Something my husband is really good at, and he's good at taking education just all day seamless in our life. Whenever there's an opportunity to teach them something just out in our everyday world, he takes that opportunity. And it could be anything. Like, he went on a trip to New Orleans, so he made a video while he was there and showed the kids,
So
look
fun.
around, and we played it for him, played it for the kids later, but just make it seamless throughout everything that you're doing.
That's great. Yes.
Something that's been helpful for us at the beginning of our marriage, and we've had to change it, but, establishing this is my stewardship, this is his stewardship for everything in the home, because homeschool obviously is not just the lessons, it's the home and the school, and it's a lot for mom to do all day, especially when you have 4 or 5 kids, that are on these different levels. But especially if you like things maybe a certain way and your wife doesn't, which I'm sure happens a lot. My husband is very organized and likes a clean home, and so he has taken it upon himself to, assign stewardships in all the different rooms of the house, and each kid has their own stewardship. And that's kind of, he just does that with the kids because it's super important to him. It's nice for me to have a clean home. I function a little better than he does if it's not, all the way organized, but it's been really helpful, and it's been great for our kids, and they've learned a great responsibility that way, and their help, in addition to other things that they do in the home already. But also, he also offered to take over the laundry, and so every other Saturday he does all the laundry. And it hasn't been perfect, I've been having to do some loads throughout the week or whatever, but just little things like that, household things, and if you're not home all the time, obviously you can't really maybe help out that way a whole lot, but it's also helpful for me when he, because I don't want to ask him to do too many things because I know he does a lot already. And so it's helpful in our interviews together that, he'll ask, what can I do to help you? And I ask, what can I do to help you? And so it's not laying it all on him, I need you to do all these things, and he, telling me, well, I want you to do all these things different, but rather putting it in the other perspective of how can I be a help to you? And just offering, maybe 1 or 2.
Great. Can I just add to that real quick? obviously she should be up here, not me. One thing tied to that stewardship idea was that we wanted to obviously teach them responsibility, take accountability, stewardship for the home, because the home is the learning environment, right? It is the place where we want to feel the Spirit. It's next to the temple as sacredness. Also built into that is a point system where they can gain points throughout the week for manners. We check manners at the dinner table. Bedtime routines, morning routines. There's a point system in our home. And so we don't believe in allowance, but we believe in helping them gain stewardship for the things that they're accountable for or should be as part of a family unit. And so those points are tallied throughout the week, and it's a great motivation. And it doesn't cost you anything. And it has substance, because the points are built in that they can trade the points in for some treats. They can trade them in for movie nights with mom or dad. They can trade them in for game nights. And so I have a whole schedule worked out, and that's one of the highlights that they love to come to PCI with me, is how many points did they gain throughout the week. And then we'll plan that into our agenda of, okay, Joshua is going to have his 60-minute game night with me or with us on Wednesday night, right? So that's something they look forward to, and so it continues to motivate back and forth on the chores, the responsibilities, and having ownership, and also family time together. And I love the comment of sharing, going home and asking your child what they've learned. I think that was a great comment. It's something that we do, but I didn't think about it. At the dinner table is a great time to share those things, and it's worked great. Motivates them.
You got a captive audience at the dinner table?
Pretty captive.
Pretty captive. Okay, next question. Yes, right here.
A question. My wife and I are homeschooling our kids for the first year, and there's a lot of tutoring one-on-one, and the kids are happier than they were in public school. What I'm concerned about is when we introduce them back again in college or high school, whatever it may be, back to the classroom environment and homework and deadlines and all that, how do you incorporate to some extent deadlines and homework so that they're used to that when they get back to the regular school setting?
How old are your children?
They're 9 and 7.
Oh, so they're pretty young. Don, ultimately, you haven't really taken them, put them back into a homework deadline. They've gone to college and had to deal with that, right?
No, they do it at home also.
Okay.
I can't remember if it was mentioned up here or on the audience, of setting up, basically having the interviews and setting up educational goals. And so as you set up those educational goals, a lot of times they might say, I want to be a doctor. Sure, that's a long-term goal. But you want to set up your medium and your short-term goals also with them. As you're doing it, and I had to think for a second here, Jeremy, PCI, parent-child interview?
Parent-child interview, good
Okay.
job.
So in that parent-child interview, you can go and review over those things that they had set up for goals from the week before. And they might have done 3 lessons in math, and they were supposed to do 7. And so you hold them accountable for that, and so work with them to teach them that they do have requirements that they have to do in homeschool, just like they would have to do in a public school, so that then when they get into the universities or where they're going, it's not a big shock. Now, the biggest shock I found was the basically adjudicated type testing, such as the ACT that they were going to take. And with that, if you fail the first time, you can still do it a second or a third time. But give them requirements and things that they have to meet, and they have to be accountable to you on.
One of the big challenges with being a first-year homeschooling father is fear. You start to think about the future and all the things that, what if they don't do this, and what if they don't do that? You're going to find that your children have individual missions in this life, that God loves them, again, more than you do, knows exactly where they're supposed to go. And as you and your wife are prayerful and consistent in the best you can do, you're going to find at age 12 or 13, one of your children is going to say, look, I want to go up to the legislature and volunteer. There are deadlines there. There are assignments that they're going to be asked to do. 13, 14, they're going to say, I'm interested in this. Well, there's a class at the local college. Oh, okay, good. I'm interested in doing that. In other words, just life itself will give deadlines and homework assignments and things like that. If you're looking and seeking and encouraging them to look out beyond your home, if that's right for them, type of a thing. And you can set it up and make it real in the home, but I think the opportunities this world offers, and with online classes, with, you know, if they're interested in computer programming, whatever, they jump into anything. There are going to be deadlines and homework assignments and opportunities to struggle and fail and learn how to be accountable and so forth. So move forward with faith. Next question. Yes, sir.
The concept of respect, I've got 4 kids, we homeschool them all, they're 6 to 13. And, you know, we're in our 3rd or 4th year doing it, and we know when they're in school, they show teachers a certain level of respect. When they're at home, it's a lot more casual setting. And maybe this depends on the child, are you teach your dad at home when school's going on and then regular dad after school, or are you the same person throughout? Because we've seen with some of our kids, you know, that are getting in that 9, 10, 11-year-old range, the respect is kind of one of those things that, you know, sometimes I really have to restrain myself from saying what's really on my mind about how they're acting, because I want to do it in a positive way. How do you approach that?
So they're still at home. You don't have them going out anywhere else.
Correct. They're homeschooled through.
Can I take that first? You know, particularly when they're getting older like that and they're starting to think on their own. I mean, we have my daughter, who's actually Mr. Randall's class. She went from 9, 10-year-old sweet little thing to 11, 12 to all of a sudden having very strong opinions and really struggling with showing respect to, particularly to her mother. And those are great opportunities for dads to sit down and speak very, very firmly and kindly, but set up structures, set up reward programs, privileges, all those types of things. There's no room for that in the home. And so, yeah, you, the dad, has mothers should as well, but I think dads have an extra special something to say, you will not speak to your mom that way, and you will not speak to me that way. And until I see some change in your behavior, these are things that will be off your plate for a while. And I've had it where my daughter, and I'll talk about this daughter in particular, you know, she would come back after a day of being very positive and very respectful. And my wife would say, okay, well, she's been very good. And I'm like, no, let's go 3 more days. I'm not convinced, and this is what I want to see. And when I do see it, I let her know. That's wonderful. That's exactly what I'm looking for every single day. And just, you know, I think I'm not being not positive. I'm just letting her know that this is what's expected, and so don't be afraid. They're gonna try you, and they're gonna push you even harder. And when they know Dad's consistent and Dad follows through, they will step up, and the respect will come back.
Can I just say something to that as well? Yeah. So on the other end, Mariah's very respectful in class.
Oh my goodness! Always respectful in class.
So there is that difference, right? In different settings, they act differently, and we all do. One thing I did want to note, though, is, you know, being a husband, being a father, sometimes we might see ourselves as better than maybe we are, and I've had to realize that, you know, as much as I love my wife and try to respect her, maybe my attitude sometimes and the things that I respond to her are not as respectful as maybe they should be. Because aren't our children a direct reflection of our own behaviors? At least with one of my sons in particular, he emulates all the negative about me. And I have others who emulate all the, you know, a lot of the positive things, but he picks up on all the negatives and kind of uses that as, well, I'm going to try it because Dad does it. Now, he respects me and he loves me and he looks up to me, but he's the one that will call me on things as well. Well, Dad, you know. And so that's been a huge self-reflection in my part of, well, maybe I'm not doing what I should be doing as well. So there's that part of it. So that's very insightful. And then Rule touched on this. You know, as I've taught over the last 12 years, I've often heard other teachers say, wow, you have a great class. Wow, they're very respectful. They're very good in our class when they go to specialties and things. And, you know, it's like, well, they didn't necessarily come like that because there's a certain level of expectation. Children want to do hard things, and we need to let them do those hard things. And so, that was addressed in the other room. They also want to be held accountable, because that instills that confidence in them, and it holds them to that level of, I believe in you, I trust in you. And so consistency is so key, and I can't emphasize that enough. But being fair, they understand when maybe you're not fair. So holding them accountable, keeping high expectations, but doing it in a loving way. One of the best things that I've learned recently is when I do need to correct my children, I get so much farther with them when I take them in private rather than in public. And it does a lot for them. It does a lot for me. And it endears me more to them. It shows them the self-respect, and so they then reflect that. And I see that more with my relationship with them and with their mother as well. So.
And then when they actually start to do what you, as a father, you expect them to do, daddy dates, boy or girl, they just thrive on those things. Doesn't matter how long it is or where it is. Don, did you have any thoughts? Or you?
Yeah, I want to have a question back for you on. You mentioned that sometimes the respect in the more formal part of the day in the schooling is different than the respect at home after that. Do you believe that the respect should be different?
No, I think it should be the same.
Exactly, I agree with that. And so we need, because I found children, if you want them to be different in different settings, sometimes they get really confused on which setting they're in and how they should behave in certain things. We need to make sure that we set that standard of respect. And just as Jeremy said, it needs to start with us as fathers and husbands on how we respect our children and our spouses, because they will emulate us. And then we teach them, those parameters of respect. It's the same thing out in the world of how we treat people that we meet on the street, how we treat people at church and everything else. And when they're outside those parameters that are set up and that we agree upon in our family councils or wherever they are, then we need to let them know privately so that we're not embarrassing them in front of their peers, which happen to be their siblings, but take them aside privately and let them know what is the proper standards that we have agreed upon.
I was just going to make a comment, something we do. There's times when either a child is struggling in a subject, and I think so much, sometimes you just are trying to drive home this principle, or you're too emotionally involved, and then this child is emotional, and she's hard on herself, and I'm like, honey, you're not going to be able to learn. Like when when you're this wrapped up and you're so mad, you're working it off. Like you've got to relax, and it doesn't matter what I say, it's not working. And there are like once or twice a week where I have to get him on the phone, and because you guys have a different relationship with your children than the moms do. And the moms are with the kids all day and we get stressed, and there are subjects that maybe I feel like are harder for me to teach or to say the right things. And so I have noticed if I feel like I'm getting too emotional and I'm not getting through, I'll take a break, I'll give my daughter the phone, I'll send her upstairs in a quiet place to call to dad. And it's like magic. It's a total reset to the day. And so I appreciate him picking up the phone when he's at work, because sometimes it is an emergency. I'm like, everything's getting derailed. I just need you to talk to her, and he will. And even though he always brings it back to them respecting me, he always tries to find out like her side first and what she's coming from and what she's struggling from. And even if it's like a fight with her brother, he wants to know her side. He wants to know why she's struggling with him. And he can totally take it objectively without the emotion and see what's happening. And then she'll talk to him, and might tell her to go meditate, he might tell her to go apologize, he might tell her to take a break. And then she brings the phone back to me, and he's like, this is what I told her, this is what I encouraged her to do, but she needs to do this for you, and she needs to apologize to this person. And we'll take a 15-minute break, we'll come back, she'll do, and it's a reset. And so that's something that
That's a great comment. Thank you for sharing that, because I'm going to do that and invite my wife to do that. One other thing in our PCIs is I ask the children individually, how is your relationship with sibling number 1, 2, 3, and mom and dad, so that I can hear their point of view and hear, give me a scale 1 to 10, how's it going? And they'll tell me, well, it's 8. Well, why is it an 8? What, is there something that you're doing? So set that goal with them and let them know. A lot of times they just need to hear and know that you're on their side and that you're understanding and listening. And that just softens hearts. One other thing I might add is this something that we could pray about this week? Is there something that you could pray about in your prayers? Maybe I can not tease my sister as much, or maybe, hey, let's pray for her so that she doesn't tease you as much, right? Or can you pray that you can be a little bit kinder? So those PCIs are essential in helping open up that communication. So.
Okay. We have about 10 minutes left. Any other questions? Has this been helpful? What a blessing you are to your families. My goodness, what courage. We need more and more people like you moving forward with faith, for sure. Yes, back there, ma'am.
So my husband and I never thought that I would be at a homeschooling conference.
Welcome.
But here we are. We haven't started yet. We're thinking of starting in the fall or maybe pulling out this year. But just any suggestions from you veterans of homeschooling on getting started, and maybe the things that were surprisingly awesome, or things that turned out well, or just any little advice for someone just about to take the jump.
Let me add something.
Anyone out there before maybe?
Oh, yeah,
we got some moms in here that could speak to that. Lisa, why don't you share some thoughts?
I read Thomas Jefferson Education.
I did that.
Oh, good job.
Okay. Any other mom suggestions here? Or Stan, did you have something, Stan?
We're probably only about 6 months ahead of you, and we made the decision to pull kids out because of some things that we were seeing in dynamics, relationships, and things at home. All of our kids are adopted, and there are some interesting and amazing blessings that go with that, but there are also wounds that those kids carry.
Yeah.
And we were seeing those emerge individually, and we were seeing them do a really amazing job of bringing it up in each other. It was getting really tough. Bringing them home, and we're only about a month into this, has made it worse in the first instance, not better, because now we really do have to get along with each other. And so there's a lot more prayer, and there's a lot more time going to bed and all this kind of stuff, where there's detox from everything that's going on. And honestly, giving them academic stuff to do right now, I do it when I can, but we're not attempting to do really significant readings. We do a little bit each day because we're kind of trying to work that up. But it is taking a phenomenal amount of work in our particular case to go through that. It's helping. But, I would just be watching for that, and we made the decision knowing that that was the likely initial consequence. And we just described it, look, anytime we clean up, it gets messier first. But I think the PCI piece has probably been the single most important ingredient, kind of daddy dates, mommy dates, things like that, where the kids get us one-on-one. That's the lubricator and the driver of almost everything. And where we get progress is because of that.
Right here, and then gentleman over here.
If you read TJ and you know the detox, I think is super important. We've never taken our kids out because they've always been in homeschool, but just talking with other parents who have done that, I think exactly the relationship building is the most important. And just setting the routines in the home, and I think that as parents, really, really working hard to have the vision that you want for your family and sharing that a lot with your kids. So they know, this first month of this is really not really fun. Maybe it will be super fun the first month and then not, but whatever, it goes up and down. But having that vision as the parent really helps instill within them a sense of security, a sense of, oh, mom and dad know what they're doing and they're not going to ruin my life, and you don't feel like you're ruining their life. And, you know where you're going, and you pray about it together, you develop a family mission statement, it just really, I think it all comes together as you're prayerful and you establish that vision, and it might change over time, but you're always working on it and you're always sharing it and having the kids' input, and together it's something that, you know, that they feel positive about more often than not.
Right here.
The parent-child interviews, I know everybody has probably a little different way of doing it. So what has worked well in the past? What hasn't worked? You do it together as mother and father. You do different ones with mothers, different ones with fathers. What have you all done? What's worked well? Just to give some ideas about.
We never do it together because that doesn't work for us.
I am not good together.
Yeah, to our kids, that felt like tag team.
Yeah.
And they don't like it. So they'll actually listen to either of us individually in a much better way than they will the two of us together.
Jeremy, any thoughts on that?
Just, let me go back to the mission statement first and then to answer that question. I don't want to underscore the value of a mission statement. It's important that you and your wife come together and actually form a vision for your family. Because vision is what drives really the principles of what you're trying to accomplish. And that's something that you can relate to, like a personal constitution. Hey, brother and sister are fighting or arguing, or they're fighting against the academics. Hey, what are we trying to accomplish here, right? You know, hands to serve others, you know, feet to walk in obedience, that we might develop a Christ-like heart, okay? That's part of our mission statement. I think that's very important that you need to sit down and establish that as you're beginning your homeschool. Don't compare yourselves to others as well, you know. Educate in-laws, let them know, because obviously they can be friends or foes. And so it's important that you're able to educate others and just help them understand. Don't leave them out in the dark, because they're going to be concerned because they love you, but they're coming from a different perspective. Now to the PCI question, just real quick. We found as well that it works better to do it individually. But it's also effective if I communicate what's talked about in that PCI with Shelley, and then I go in there, and before I go into the PCI, she has things to relay to me. It would be helpful if you could address this with such and such. We've also found it's a great time to work on duty to God and personal progress as well. So that's what I have.
And did that help, sir?
Yeah, it's like
Just curious.
Just different how-tos. You know,
That's great.
What's been your experience? What's worked? When do you hold them? Is it always a Sunday? Is it very, does the mother do it different times? Do you both do it? You know, just different people's experiences would be good to hear.
Anyone else want to share thoughts on that?
You've seen one case.
I
Shelley?
have heard, you know, like the mother holds more of maybe the educational part sometimes, especially when they're younger, if that's the mother's stewardship, when they're, you know, 0 to 8, 12, whatever, you know, because she's there all the time setting the goals. And so I have a friend who, you know, she's got kids from 8 up to mission age, but she just barely started a couple months ago, and she said really what she does, her husband will, you know, take the other kids to other things. Sunday evening, she'll spend, you know, she doesn't set a timer, but she'll spend, you know, she'll just call the kid in, and she says right now all they do is just talk. And she said that's been really helpful, just to have that individual time with each child, and she said it's been really confidence building for that child. You know, and they've seen that in their own personal life, you know, in primary or wherever they are, that they feel more confident just because they have more of an opportunity, you know, to really be one-on-one with mom, or, you know, if it's with dad or whatever. And, you know, she said, you know, sometimes they'll talk about the educational goals, sometimes not. It just, she lets the child kind of lead the conversation. And she said she feels it's really important that she always prays with them and expresses her love, you know, individually with that child. And so, you know, kind of it evolves, I think, as you do it.
Can I have one more?
Mrs. Reed and then Mr. Swim.
And I apologize if I came in late, so this might have been already discussed, but with children who may be adopted, or children who get to that point of rebellion stage, what have you, I've always received the counsel that we as parents, we need to take care of ourselves. And we need to be learning for ourselves and studying scripture for ourselves, so that we can come to the table ready and willing and not exhausted and tired to contribute. And then also, if there's a point in time where you want to bail, don't bail. Step back a little bit, take it easy, relax a little bit, it's okay. You don't have to replicate school in the home. You don't have to do that.
One last comment, and then we'll be done.
Just real quick on the father-child interviews. Well, we don't do them on Sunday, and that might change, but I'm in a bishopric and I do a lot of interviews on Sunday. And I find that my habits for those interviews make it too formal for my kids.
Yeah.
And so it just works better. What's working best for us so far is the day they have a parent-child interview with me, it's a day they get to stay up late. I do it at night, and it's casual, and it's, whatever. We might go out on the back porch and work on a popsicle or whatever that is. But for our particular dynamic, I feel like I listen better to them because it's a break from other interviews that I do. But
Sure.
And I would say on the adoption thing related to that, we've also chosen to work with a coach that we meet with about every 2 weeks, and this is specific to some things that deal with adoption. So we spend about an hour with them. That's been a pretty necessary pressure release for us, kind of a third-party sanity check because it's been hard.
Yeah.
Really hard on some days. But I think you do have to kind of be flexible and expect the thing to evolve a little bit on you. If you try to create the perfect plan, you're just begging for broken dishes because it's not going to work.
Well, thank you. Everyone, have a wonderful rest of the day. I think it's lunchtime, and I hope this has been helpful.
Thank you.
You're welcome.